Hey, next level agents. This is Kevin Kauffman, and our guest today is Todd Bookspan. Todd, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing awesome. I'm so excited to have the opportunity to hang out with you via Zoom.
Yeah, man. Thanks a lot. I appreciate you taking some time out of your busy schedule, and we did this purposely after the hour of 12 p.m. because I didn't want to make sure I did not want to be the reason you didn't win today. So we got it later in the day.
I really appreciate that. That means a lot to me because other people try to, impact that commitment of mine. And I'm glad that you're not forcing me to choose.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, that's honestly, obviously I'm making a joke, but that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on the podcast today is because, number one, because of your product, Win by Noon, and more importantly, the method and the thinking behind it and the way it's impacted your mortgage business. So obviously this is a podcast geared towards real estate agents. It's not all real estate agents that listen in. And we certainly have our fair share of, I'll call them entrepreneur type guests, but yours, kind of your story and your message resonates across. Doesn't matter if you're talking about real estate, mortgages, or really any other business for sure in sales. And so I wanted to kind of bring you on, talk a little bit about your story, talk a little bit about how you developed the Win by Noon planner, and then just some other fun stuff since we know each other so well.
Awesome. I'm excited about it. And it's been a journey. You're right. That's what it's all about. So ask away. I'm an open book. So what do you want to know?
Cool. Well, give us a little rundown. Like who is Todd Bookspan? What's your mortgage business like? And, you don't have to tell me every single detail from the beginning, but give me an idea. Like when did you get into business? What does your mortgage business look like today? We'll start there and then we'll kind of go into some of the other fun stuff.
Sure. So I'll work a little bit backwards. Because of Win by Noon, I've been out of production now for a couple of years, but the team still exists and I still has my thumbprint all over it. I set the vision for the team and coach the team members, and certainly they operate with Win by Noon. And ironically, though, you are realtors. I mean, realtors are more than 50% of our Win by Noon subscribers. And over the last 8 years, our team has done over 3,000 loans. We've done over, I think it's, 600 million, something crazy like that. The last few years we've averaged about just under 500 units a year, right around $100 million for those last few years. And so, for me, it's, it kind of comes from, 17-year career in mortgages. So I did it the wrong way so many times. And then as I was lucky and successful along the way. And certainly some of that, someone says, well, it's not luck when you're successful. But ultimately, in the end, most of us are so distracted, right? I got in the mortgage business so that I could set my own hours. And that was exactly why I was struggling. I could do whatever I wanted to do. And like a lot of us in sales, kind of borderline ADD, some people would say I probably am over the line. And so ultimately, I started out of college owning a bike store. I mean, I owned bicycle stores for 10 years, the first privately held business at U of A. I decided to get out of that because it wasn't fun anymore, and got my MBA at night. And you would think to yourself, like, well, what do you need an MBA to be in this business? You don't. It was just a way to stall while I figured out what I wanted to do. And my buddy dragged me into the mortgage business, and I had to go out and buy a pair of pants because I only owned shorts. And, I know that would fly with you and your team. Oh, yeah. But for their mortgage company, you actually had to wear pants. So I had to go out and buy some pants and go on in there. And I did lots of different things. I mean, one thing that I do find is you mentioned entrepreneurs. I've been an entrepreneur since I was a kid. And so I got scrappy to figure out, well, how can I best do business? How can I best be a partner to the realtors out there? And for me, it all came down to business planning. And so really early on in my career, I sat down with real estate agents, whether they were new in the business or, $50 million producers or $100 million producers. And we strategized, hey, what does your quarterly plan look like? And, really came in and alongside of them and helped them figure out where they were stuck and what it would take to get there. And then I hit a point where, I did different things within my career. My wife and I started with 4 employees and grew to almost 100 employees in 4 branches over 4 years before that company sold. And then I kind of made this conscious decision, right? You hit this, as Dan Sullivan from Strategic Coach would say, the ceiling of complexity, where we did 80 million, 400 units, 80 million, 400 units, 80 million, 400 units, 3 years in a row. And I was like, gosh, you know what? I want to be $100 million producer. What can I do differently? And at that point, we were already tracking and doing the target day commitments, the stuff that is in Win by Noon currently that I teach people in sales all over that they should implement in their business. But the only difference is that I wasn't as consistent as I wanted to be. So just on a whim, I said, you know what, I'm going to block my calendar until 11:30 because previously I had a business development manager, I had an assistant, I had a business partner, and oh, by the way, I work with my wife too, and she could schedule for me. All these people had access to my calendar, and they were scheduling things for me where it was convenient for them or for whoever I was meeting, not what was convenient and best for me. And so when I blocked my mornings off, made it so I was forced to do those activities, and I truly forced myself to do those activities, is when, you know, our business grew, gosh, almost 45% in a year, closed over 100 million, over 550 units. And long story short, that's the abbreviated version of the story.
Awesome. So you said you blocked it till 11:30, but it's called Win by Noon. What happened
Come
there?
on, man. Win by noon sounds way cooler than win by 11:30.
Absolutely, it does. So that's cool. Plus, you know, it just like it gives that extra half an hour of work, like that little extra push. So I like that.
Well, the weird thing is it didn't, most days didn't take me that long to get the job done. And I copied it from you realtors, right? I was actually, at that time, I was going and sitting in real estate offices and dialing with their teams from 9 to noon. And so ironically, that's sort of what I was doing for 3 months of that time. I spent doing that. And then the other time I was locked off for a while at like hiding out in coffee shops or a restaurant. And then finally I was able to go to my office, put a little post-it note and said, do not disturb. And I could explain to them why I was doing what I was doing. And they were seeing the results. I mean, the numbers were growing pretty quick. And, you know, kind of in the end, you know, realtors, you guys have had it like dialed in all the time. You guys have a commitment to lead generation. And most people in the mortgage business, you know it because you make fun of loan officers all the time. Most people in the mortgage business don't have that same commitment, and not all realtors or people in other sales jobs do as well.
Yeah, no doubt. So, okay. So you had this epiphany, right? So you just said, I'm going to block my calendar. There's too many people scheduling for me. I'm going to block it off until 11:30 and kind of force myself to do what I know is important every day. So I can get that done. And what was it? Was it a realization of that goal of getting to that 500 unit mark where you went, okay, hey, I actually have something here. This time blocking thing works. Is that where Win by Noon was born, or like, how did that actually come about once you had implemented it yourself in your business?
You know, it's funny that you say that. So I had actually had these forms that I would record all of my activities and my results on. And then I have a CRM as well. That's where everything lived, right? We always said if it wasn't in the CRM, it didn't happen. But day in and day out, I carried around this notebook. I shrunk down my calendars. I printed them out. I taped them in there. I'm kind of a nerd. Yes, you can call me that. And that's how I lived. I planned, and I was really, I mean, I was adamant that was it. Cause I was frustrated. I really wanted to hit that level of success that I believed I can do, right? We all think we have a certain potential, and I felt like my potential was hitting that bigger mark. And I had to look at myself and say, gosh, well, where am I really getting in my way? And, you know, it was really here, right? I pulled my cell phone out in the morning. I'm responding to other people's texts, emails, and phone calls, and I'm driving different directions. And then to answer your question, when I pulled out of production, I was coaching one-on-one, and I'm not doing that currently. I'm just doing some more group stuff and some other fun projects on Facebook. However, as I was talking to one of my one-on-one clients, he was telling me how busy he was. Like, you know, I call them my young guns. I had a few of my buddies who were CEOs of mortgage companies had me coaching their top LOs that were, you know, the fastest growing ones. And there are all these guys in their late 20s, early 30s. And not that they were clueless. I shouldn't say that in case they listen to this, but, you know, they needed a little bit in life, but they were all really busy, right? We've all said that, like, I'm super busy. And I was thinking in my head, all right, busy doing what? And I finally got better as a coach. And I said, all right, well, help me understand, what does your day look like? And they were walking me through it. I said, okay, you know, this isn't all about time blocking. It's about priority management, like doing the most important things first. And then I said, well, tell me your numbers. And that's when it hit. Like, my numbers were bigger at that time, you know, all the activities I was doing in a day, and their numbers were smaller, right? Some of them didn't know what their numbers were because they never tracked it. And that's part of the Win by Noon philosophy. But I realized there was a disconnect. And so then they were asking, okay, tell me about your day. And so I walked them through how I prioritized into daily disciplines, the things I had to do every day, target date commitments, and, you know, something I was truly committed to do on a day in order to make it easier to do, right? Made it more efficient because I was able to get it all done from one spot in my CRM at that time. And I was more consistent because I told everyone, hey, on Tuesdays, I'm going to call this type of client. Hey, on Thursdays, I'm going to do this. And so once you start telling everyone, this is when I'm going to make it happen, well, guess what? You got to do it or you lose credibility. And so eventually one of them said to me, gosh, Todd, it sounds like you told them my 11:30 story. It sounds like you won by noon. Pretty good,
Wow,
huh?
that's funny. That's a good one, man. Okay. So then so you decide, like, I'm going to make this a product and make it available for other people?
Yeah, you know, it's funny. Along the way, I had a team member who saw my notebook and she said, gosh, if you made me one of those, it would certainly be easier than these pieces of paper you keep giving me. And then I had other friends who were leading big teams in the country on the mortgage side. And they said, gosh, could you make that for me and my team? And so sure. Bottom line was I did a test run of them where they were just a small 1-month version of it. I called it the rough draft and put it out there. And they're like, oh, that's pretty cool. And then I co-host a big mortgage group with the CEO of Mortgage Coach, a guy named Dave Savage, called the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind. And we had just a small group at that time. I had like 100 people on there on our Friday webinars and showed it because Dave's like, hey, show that cool new notebook of yours, I think is what he called it. And, you know, we sold a bunch, and in fact sold more than we had, and then realized we had a product. And first thing anyone said, actually, when I had the rough draft version was, hey, when's the real estate agent version coming out? Because obviously, you know, there's, as I already said, I was a business planner with my realtor partners. There's that symbiotic relationship we can have if we work together and help each other grow. And that's the reason why the real estate agent version, even though it's been out for 3 months less than the loan officer version, we sell more. It's primarily because of the fact that we've got loan officers around the country, and title reps for that matter, pushing it with their real estate agents, which I find is awesome.
That's very cool. Yeah. So it's a cool thing. So tell me about, if you don't mind, this doesn't have to all be about Win by Noon, but you mentioned a few things that are in there, and you could talk on the real estate version or just in the general version as well. What are some things that go into this daily planner? You mentioned some rituals. I know that part of it is planning too for the week ahead, the month ahead, the quarter ahead, the year ahead. But give me some of your, as the guy who basically invented the thing, like, what are your highlights, if you will, of the planner? Why would somebody like me or any other realtor or mortgage lender listening in on this want to use this product?
So one is it's paper primarily, right? We actually have a beta test going of our app right now. So depending when you're listening to this, you may or may not be able to actually purchase the app, the electronic version of it. I've got a ton of people who use the paper version, like, I don't need that. And I'm like, well, then it's just your online companion because it's going to add up your numbers and do your conversion rates for you. But I always tell people, and what I get excited about is just people who use it as a day planner and in a prioritization list of their to-dos are actually telling me that they're improving their business, because they're oftentimes in business, we lack organization, right? We're on the go, especially you realtors, right? You're on the go all the time. And you just need somewhere as a repository for all the information. We've all had that where we're at the restaurant and we're writing down the lead on the napkin, right? We've all had those kind of moments. And I just say, gosh, what if you just had a book where you could put it in, into that book? It's also a business planning tool and also a business review tool. I was specific when I mentioned the review part before, is that, most people don't track, and therefore they don't know what they're doing to get the results that they want. And in the end, I just had an aha. One of the guys on my team said, hey, how much do I make when I pick up the phone? And I thought, all right, let's just figure that out. Like, how many people do you have to dial in order to actually get a closed transaction? And then it's really easy to reverse engineer how many people you have to call, or how much time do you have to spend on the dialer if you're, someone who's dialing with the, with the headset on a dialing tool, to figure out what it's going to take to get there. Because I find that the best people in any business, for that matter, know this is the activity and this is the result I can expect from it. And so people who take the time to actually have a schedule, follow it, plan and review, I see growing more, and with a little less stress. I mean, we all have stress in this business. Don't get me wrong. I don't have a magic wand you can wave, but I think if you can spend the time to say, hey, here's what my ideal week is, right? Like, hey, ideally every week I'm going to do these activities at these times. And then you're really committed to it, right? I use that word commit a lot, because what I find is that some people are interested in success, but most people aren't invested in success. I stole that from Nick Foles. I listened to him being interviewed by Tony Robbins. So I'm an Eagles fan. Sorry. If you guys all hate me, you can turn it off now. But I loved it, right? Like, are you truly invested in your success? And you have to have the right tools to get there. You have to have systems to get there. And I'm all about being simple. I don't think it needs to be overly complex. And that's the challenge with the goal planning part of Win by Noon, is people look at that and go, oh my gosh, he wants me to figure out what I'm going to do this quarter. And I just say, gosh, just jump in, start tracking what you do in a day, total at the end of the week, and look at it and say, how did I do? Am I getting the results I want? And then make a plan for the next week. And then after 2 weeks, you look at it and say, great, how did I do this week compared to last week? Okay, am I on track? Do I need to increase certain activities? Are there certain activities I should eliminate? And then over time, as you have more data and you spend just a few minutes in the week doing all these things, then I think you're going to win more. And then, of course, the icing on top of the cake is I think people who are truly committed to get it done first before they get distracted by everything else are the ones who are winning the most. hence the name Win by Noon. But I would tell you that I got a lot of people who call me and say, gosh, Todd, I can't win by noon, but I can win by 2. And when I do, it's amazing. I have people like, well, I'm not a morning person. Like, I got my kids and I got to drop them up at school. I start at noon and then I do those activities until 5. And then I win by 5. I'm like, awesome. It's kind of has to be wherever you can set it up. But in the end, what I find is that the people who truly say, this is what I'm going to do, this is when I'm going to do it, they actually schedule it out and write it down, are the ones who win. And we've tried to make it easy. We've got a launch edition of the planner, which has the instructions built in, which walk people through. We've got free online tutorials. We host a ton of free webinars on it to try to get people going. And all I say is that it doesn't matter how much you dig in, because it's really overwhelming to start. But if you actually just start tracking a day, and then the week, then the month, then the quarter, all of a sudden you're going to see you're going to gain momentum, because the results are the proof, right? The results speak for themselves. And I don't know, I'm just, I'm taken back every time someone sends me an email or calls me and tells me the impact it's had on their, not just their business, but also on their personal life. And, I hate that word balance, but I'm hearing that a lot lately, that, hey, this is giving me balance. And I don't think that. I think what it's doing is that they're scheduling their personal priorities as well as their business priorities. And when you do both, then you're reacting less. And you still have to have reaction time. Don't get me wrong, because, I react all the time as well. I've got email just like you do. I've got Facebook Messenger just like you do. I've got Instagram just like you do. I'm trying to stay off Snapchat, but I think you're pretty big on that, Kevin.
No, I just use it for my niece. What's funny is I think you just nailed it. For me, what I'm hearing is it's about really breaking it down to the simple yet very important things. And my assumption is, and I don't know, I don't have any research, I don't have any data to back this up. My assumption is, especially when it's written down by hand on a piece of paper, there's a little more of a connection from the person who wrote it down about, like I said, I'm going to do these things. I really need to get these done in this time frame, right? Especially if they used it in a certain time block, from say 9 to 10 or 10 to 11, whatever the case is. My hunch is it helps people stay a little more accountable with themselves, and it allows them to get a little win. I was talking with a newer agent a week or 2 ago who's on my buddy's team, and she's actually been very successful by any measure for someone who's been in the business less than a year. And she was asking about confidence, and I said, I guess the way you build your confidence is just, and I think I heard it from you actually, it's just by being consistent, by doing some activities, and then you get consistent with your activities. What happens is it breeds confidence when you're doing the things that you said you would do on a consistent basis. And it starts with doing it one day, then doing it 2 days in a row, then 3 days, and then next thing you know, it's a week and 2 weeks and a month and a quarter. And that's where confidence truly comes from.
Yeah, I love that. And I love hearing you bring it up, because I totally agree. And in the end, none of these jobs are rocket science. I was listening to someone talk about it. He's like, well, Win by Noon is not rocket science. No offense, Todd. I'm like, hey, no offense taken. And he said for him, he felt it was consistency. Right. And so I thought, all right, that's awesome. Like that's, whatever it is to someone is great. And it's weird, because you're right. When you write something down, there's tons of studies out there that when you're writing versus typing, you're going to retain it better. For me, I just think it's just the simple thing of, it's just easier to have a piece of paper to make a note on than it is to whip out my phone and do it. I know you're pretty electronic. I can pull out my calendar and look at my schedule tomorrow faster than someone can pull up tomorrow on their iPhone. I've raced people before, not intentionally, but just someone's like, hey, are you guys available? And we all pull it out and do it. And so, it's not, the reason obviously we're doing the online app version is because not everyone wants to use it. Ironically, what we're seeing is from the beta test side of it, people who are trying it out are actually starting to buy the planner. So it's working in the opposite direction, which is kind of nice.
That's good. That's good. I think it's a mutual friend of ours that says, give people what they want, sell people what they want, give them what they need. Right. So, maybe that's what you're doing in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, I don't think people, if you say, gosh, especially those of you listening, on the video, I could show people, right? It's not a little small thing. I could tell you, it doesn't necessarily fit in your purse. That's the biggest criticism I have. We're working on a smaller version. It's just harder. We got to figure out what are we going to remove to make it so you can actually read it without a microscope. And people want a little more feminine. We're okay with that. We're totally open to suggestions and customization. So that part's been kind of fun. But in the end, yeah, you're right. Not everyone, people don't want accountability, but they need it, right? There's so much out there we could say about business, but obviously on the real estate side. You see this. I think I'm preaching to the choir, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, I believe it obviously as well. So are you telling me, what I want to know is, am I going to be able to add like glitter and stones and stuff like that to my cover, like coming soon in 2019?
No, that would be nice. I don't think we're going to quite go that far in, in customization. But as you may know, there's a group at Group 4610 that they have their customized with your logo on the cover. So we do have some customization now, and our goal in the long term is to definitely offer more. And I will put. No one suggested glitter or rhinestones yet, but I'll put that on the list.
Well, I'm just thinking out loud here, man. You don't have to do it. Maybe just put it on the idea list and maybe come back to it next quarter or something.
All ideas.
Yeah.
Go on the list.
Exactly. Yeah. So, okay. So that's cool. So, all right. So tell me what else you have going on. So you mentioned something about like a Facebook group with Dave Savage, and some coaching stuff. Tell me about some of the other things you're involved in, Todd.
It's funny. Some days I feel like I'm throwing a lot of things at the wall to see what sticks. But, the couple things that we've done that have been pretty successful is we host, we're doing our second one coming up. Depending when you're listening to, it's going to be the first week of April 2019. But there'll be more in the future if you're listening to this, like, way down the road, because you're like, wow, I'm going to go listen to that old interview with Todd and Kevin. And we do a 2.5-day live certification to train other people on how to lead themselves as well as lead others with Win by Noon. And right now we've got title reps who've been through, we've got loan officers who've been through, we've got team leaders on the real estate side, office managers who are going to come through the next one. And so it's designed really to help people be able to actually learn it better for themselves and to teach it not only one-on-one, but with ready-made presentations to walk away. One guy literally presented it the next week after, he got back home on a Friday night, and the next week he was in his in a real estate office presenting to a big group, how to teach it so that people can use it in their business to hold themselves and other people accountable to grow. Because, my belief is everyone needs a little bit of accountability, almost everyone at least, but I think you could argue that both ways. We've got a pretty cool secret Facebook group of loan officers. We're going to launch a real estate agent version of that soon, where we've got people coming in there live and sharing at a little different level than we see oftentimes sharing online. As well as accountability. People are actually turning in their Win by Noons every week so that we can look at their weekly review, week ahead action plan. And I would tell you, in that group, some people are shy and they email them in, and actually other people are actually throwing them in a thread there. And again, that accountability is what is keeping them going, because I'd done some live group coaching at the end of last year, and what the people said they wanted was no one said they wanted the accountability, but they all said they needed it. But they also all felt that having the ideas of the group were really beneficial. Having Q&A live where I could answer questions was helpful. And then we kind of went through what are your other wishes and came up with the group. It's called the Think Tank, the LO Think Tank. You just go to WBNthinktank.com. You can check it out. And, again, hopefully we'll have a real estate agent version up soon by the time you listen to this. Those are probably my two biggest initiatives right now. Really, we're just so focused always on that whole continual improvement. How can we make the planner better? I feel like the new edition that has the instructions built in for new users has been a huge upgrade. We've gotten extremely positive feedback about that. We're really trying to get the app done in better in working. That's just, developers, we love you. And then really just trying to give information, right? The more things I can do like this, where I have opportunities like this, Kevin, is just awesome for me to share the ideas. Because in the end, we already said that they're not simple or not rocket science, but if you can just take one or two of these things and implement it to be a little more successful, a little better, a little closer to your goals, that would make me really happy.
Absolutely. I think, just one step, I think it's Michael Bernoff, who we both know. He's always talking about just like 1% better, just every day. If you can just be 1% better, that really adds up a lot over time.
Oh, it compounds, right? It's funny. Everyone always says, well, what's a good conversion rate? I'm like, it depends, right? It depends. Are you getting online leads? Is this a lead from your sphere, your database, right? There's going to be a huge difference between someone who's generating leads online and someone who's, really working their 20-year-old database and, has coddled those people and built relationship over that time. And then regardless though, hey, right, if I converted at X% last month, why don't I want to, I just should convert at X% plus 1 this month. Or, if I could do it every day, like Michael said, that would be even better. But for me, that's not realistic. Maybe it is for you.
Yeah. Well, I think the thought process is just go after 1%. Like that's so much more, at least easy to wrap your head around, just being a little bit better today than yesterday. Than it is like, I think most of us, we want to make these big leaps in success, right? We want to go from, well, I didn't do any lead gen at all last year to all of a sudden I'm going to start doing 3 hours a day this year. And we all know that that never happens, right? And so just wherever you're at, there's a baseline, and just get a little bit better every day, a little bit better every week, every month, stuff like that.
30-minute chunks, right? You don't need to commit a ton of time, right? There's a Italian guy named Pomodoro. Oh no, he called it the Pomodoro technique. It's the tomato in Italian. You see a lot of timers that are shaped like a tomato, and it's a 25-minute sprint with 5 minutes to recover. Now the challenge is people then get on their email in that 5 minutes and then whoop, they're off, or get on Facebook, whoop, they're off. But it's the whole idea of these short little sprints. And I would tell you, yes, when I was sitting in a real estate office for 3 hours, guess what? I was locked and loaded for 3 hours. But my activities that drove my business, that drove it up 45% almost in a year, took anywhere from 30, 45 minutes on some of the shorter activity days to, maybe an hour and a half to 2 hours. I've got this new philosophy. I actually believe that people would just spend 2 hours on their most important priorities first thing in the day. They could double their business in 90 days to 6 months. And the reason I believe that is because the people in my group coaching who did that, like that was their thing, they owned their ideal week, are the ones who grew. And none of them did it for more than 2 hours. And so I think oftentimes, you just said it, you got to start somewhere, start with something little, and then build up that momentum, and then cut yourself a break when you have a bad day, right? Give yourself some time off, celebrate the wins. And I think that's how you grow. And one last thing I'll throw in there about it while I'm thinking about it too. One of the things that Win by Noon does is you prioritize your top things for the day, right? And you're talking about what you're grateful for, right? In the morning and at night, it's tracking, your sleep and your morning routine, evening routine, and new habits as well. So it's not just business. It's also got the personal piece built in there. And ironically, I've got some people like, I don't do any of that crappy business planning you talk about, Todd, but I just love getting up and talking about how grateful I am and doing those other things. And so again, you just got to figure out where do you need to be, and hopefully, figure out how to take away what is best for you at this time to get to the next level.
I'm afraid you might have already answered this question, but I had it teed up in my head, so I'm going to ask it anyways, which was, you're obviously around a lot of realtors. Like you clearly spend a lot of time around real estate agents. What are the common things you see success-wise that either successful ones are having, or that that if everybody, for the most part, everybody, that's a generalization, if they would just apply a little more of this, like what's that could help them kind of up their game a little bit?
I would say this, the best agents, first and foremost, have a little bit of organization, right? Systemization around things. Like if you're going to call leads for an hour, you got to actually be able to find them somewhere, right? They can't be on slips of paper in a box or, just in your phone randomly, right? You've got to be able to systematize and organize it. And then I think that they just have that, I'm going to beat that word to death, commitment around the lead generation part, because ultimately in the end, we've all ridden that whole roller coaster of quote success, right? Where you have a great month followed by a bad month, followed by a great month, followed by a bad month, because you're busy generating leads one month and then you're busy closing them in the next month, but not generating leads. And then all of a sudden you generate leads again and you're closing deals. We all know that story. In fact, there's studies that show that 94% of people in sales wake up with no plan for their day. 91% have been consistent month over month business. And I'll tell you, early on, I was one of those 3%. I got pretty lucky. I was pretty consistent in my business. However, that's not normal, right? It wasn't always that way. And there was months where, it was a little bleak in the Bookspan, in the Bookspan household. So I think if I boil it down to one thing, is I think that the most successful realtors that I see, they think that lead gen is like brushing their teeth every day. Like they're going to do it every day because you don't want to be the person who didn't brush their teeth, and they don't want to be the person who's not closing deals because they didn't do their lead gen. That's probably my best analysis. My best analogy are those two things, because there's not much else out there that I could tell you, maybe other than put on clean underwear, that would probably gross people out.
Well, that's like a whole other podcast, and maybe we'll save that for the return trip. So let me ask you this, because here we are, we're recording this early 2019. Things are changing, right? We keep hearing the buzzword for the last 2 or 3 years is disruption, which I'm fairly sick of that word, but it's there. And I guess my question to you is, especially for agents who especially newer agents, but any agent even that just isn't so sure about the future, for people like you and me, like in the loan business and the real estate business, what pieces of advice or tips do you have, or what do you think is going to happen? I guess what I'm asking you, Todd, is as a realtor and as a mortgage officer, how do we stay relevant in the eyes of the consumer over the next 5-10 years?
It's such a great thing, and I'm tired of disruption too. And I think it's going to be interesting to see how it happens. It is changing really fast right now. And, I think that there's two things I would say about that. First and foremost, success leaves clues, right? You got to be looking at the people around you that are successful in today's market, that have already adapted to this disruption and what they're doing different. And you really want to be looking where the puck is going and try to figure out, how do I get there versus just reacting to everything else. And so I know that there are people that, certainly here in Next Level Agents, who are already doing these things, and your job should be to figure out from what you can learn from them and then implement one thing, right? It's the whole idea. You just have to start. And I'll tell you, with Win by Noon, we're seeing two trends right now, one bigger trend and one that's not very big, but we've seen it. I've had 3 people this year cancel their subscriptions because they got out of the business. 2 loan officers and 1 realtor. In fact, 1 loan officer called me today. She's now in marketing. She said, I asked her what she was doing. And then I'm also seeing a lot of people moving around, right? A lot of addresses. Hey, I'm no longer at that office. I'm over here. And we've seen a lot of that. And the grass isn't always greener, right? It's greener where you water it, but you got to plug into a model that's going to actually help you grow, that has leadership and mentorship there. And then just pick that one thing. Don't have anything crazy, right? Pick one thing. Hey, today I'm going to do this, and whatever that you think is most important to you. And then try not to get distracted by the shiny objects. Because I would tell you that the best of the best are not. They're aware of the shiny objects, right? They write down their little list. I call it an idea list. I used to call it my shiny object list. And I forced myself, it was probably a coach somewhere along the way, said, dude, you're not allowed to do anything new. You can't spend a nickel on anything else without asking my permission. So there, of course, I wasn't going to do it. And I had to write down those ideas. And then we would sit down quarterly and we would say, okay, which are the ones you want to seriously go after? And then we would prioritize just 1 or 2, maybe 3 projects at once versus trying to implement 10 things, going way overboard. Does that seem like that would make sense? What else are you seeing out there?
Well, I guess what I'm worried about now is I feel like my bedazzled Win by Noon planner is going to go on this idea list, which means it's not ever getting, we're not really ever going to take a look at it, Todd. You just let the secret out of the bag, man.
Well, that's okay. It's only $12.99 a month if you get a subscription, and you get it every quarter. So that's super easy. And all right, now I'm just going to have to do it. I'm going to have to come up. We're going to, by the time this thing airs, I'm going to have a discount code NLA for Next Level Agents. At some point, it's going to have to expire because at some point, something's going to change in there. So if you're watching this down the line, I'm married to an attorney. So let me just say it expires in 90 days, whatever that is, like July 1st, 2019. But I'll leave it on there even longer unless something crazy happens. And I'll make sure there's something special that you NLA folks get if you use that code when you buy it Win by Noon.
Awesome. I'm bedazzling my next one when I get my shipment next week. So, okay, so let's do this. I want to shift gears a little bit. We're starting to run low on time. You and I are both part of a kind of an entrepreneurial network, mastermind, if you will, called Genius Network, that we both go to. And I know why I go there, but I'd love to hear from you in your words. Why do you spend time in a mastermind that really isn't industry specific, right? Because there's people in this mastermind from all sorts of different industries. What was it that made you attend and become a member of the Genius Network?
I decided to attend it because, for the exact reason you just said, is because it's not people from our industry, right? There's one other mortgage person there. He's my buddy, one of the guys that I had coached, and it was his suggestion. So I'll give him credit for it. And he said, hey, I'm going to be doing this thing next year, Genius Network. And ironically, it's just down the street, walkable for you from your office. And so had that great opportunity. Of course, probably my highlight has been connecting with you and getting to hang out with you, truly. And for me, what I wanted to do is say, gosh, I'm around other people all the time who do things and think almost all the same way, right? We all are approaching it the same way. And so what I decided to join Genius Network was to hear from really the best of the best in the entrepreneur and info marketing space. And they're all different. There's like meditation people, and there's attorneys, and there's financial advisors, and there's people who own real estate companies, and there's, just you name the business, a lot of nutrition focused folks that are in there as well. And I want to hear, how are they doing business? And I've been learning to think differently from them. I've been learning, how are they marketing differently, so I can take my original thought was I was going to learn from them so I could help market Win by Noon better. but really what I realized the secret sauce is that now I'm going to actually start teaching how to market real estate and mortgage better. So it can be different than what everyone else is doing. Cause we've all seen it. I mean, everyone seems to be doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And not that there's anything that's going to be earth shattering, so much different that people are like, oh my gosh, that's like the Tesla of marketing. It's not going to be something as cool as that, but just little small tweaks of the way that other people are doing things in their businesses successfully that we can apply here. And then the last thing I'll say is where can I go with Win by Noon, right? I spent almost 20 years in the mortgage space dealing with the best of the best in the mortgage and real estate worlds. And now I've got this different vision of, hey, maybe you should look at this, Todd. Hey, maybe you should do that. So when you sit next to people that, you know how it works, right? What are you frustrated with? Where are you stuck? And you sit next to someone that's from a total different part of the world with a total different business, and they can speak into that. I mean, that just shakes things up in a big way.
Yeah, it's super powerful for sure. Okay, I know you read a lot. Tell me, what's the favorite book you've read in the last, call it 6 months?
Last 6 months, it's White Collar Warrior by my buddy Bill Hart. He's my first coach for 4 years, and it's just really hand-to-hand combat of sales and discipline. And he's just been a big influence and mentor in my life. And he calls himself a patriot. He loves the military. He never served himself. And he interviews really the best of the best in military and then applies that to what we do in sales. So that's a pretty cool book. And then, we're getting into this world where you talked about disruption in price. And so I'm also spending a lot of time right now focusing on books around negotiation and price, just to kind of get people's mindset of that so I can be better and teach better there. And then, of course, I'm like super health nerd since I met you, and you're the one I credit with the health that I have now. So I'm grateful for that. And I've read just way too many health books in the past year as well.
Yeah, me too. No doubt. And side note, it's kind of nice. For listeners, we have the same doctor, so we're always comparing notes because our doctor's kind of a health nut, if you will, as well. So that makes it fun. It keeps our conversations interesting for sure. So, all right, last couple questions, winding down. So you just told me some of your favorite books. I'm going to steal a question from Tim Ferriss. What book have you gifted the most?
I've gifted Darren Hardy's The Compound Effect the most.
Okay.
Over time. And again, it comes back to that simplicity, right? Just these little changes that you can implement, and that'll help you grow. Certainly other stuff. I've done a lot of Gary Vee. I'm a Gary Vee fan. I gifted a lot of Crushing It, but that was sort of self-serving it because I bought a big bunch of them, and then I got to go hang out and have brunch with him and 10 other people. So that was a self-serving. So I have gifted a lot of that one as well this year, truthfully. But ultimately, in the end, I think it's for me, I'm just so focused for the last probably decade on productivity. And so figuring out which in there is really good. Another great one in productivity is Minimalism by Greg McKeown. Is really an awesome one too. If you're struggling from a time perspective, he does a pretty good job of putting it into I think what are understandable ways to execute.
Yep. I just heard him actually on the Tim Ferriss podcast recently. So
that was good.
It was. That was a good interview. All right. So last question, stealing it from somebody we both know and listen to, Dave Asprey. So top 3 pieces of advice for just kind of kicking ass more ass at life. So whether it's business, personal life, health, doesn't matter. Todd, what are your top 3 pieces of advice when someone comes to you and says, hey, I want to kick more ass?
Get crystal clear on what that ass is you want to kick. Like, what is the goal, right? You've got to have a vision, and I'm a big believer it's got to be for your business and for your life. So if you've never heard of anyone writing a life plan, reach out to me. I'd be happy to share what that looks like. But you got to have where you're going in, looking out the dashboard. I think number 2 is schedule time for you first for improving. So whatever that means for you, and literally put that on the calendar, whether that's you're a parent and that you want to make sure that you're there for your kids' field trips, great, schedule that first. Whether it's your health, like Kevin and I have been focused on, right? Schedule time for that, but schedule whatever's most important to you first. And then probably the third thing that I would say is, mindset is so important, and don't be so hard on yourself. You can't change what you did this morning. Can't change what you did yesterday. And so what I'm finding in this world of disruption we talked about is I'm finding a lot of people who I talked to in my past, whether it was 3 months ago or 3 years ago, that are used to be super positive, super pumped up, and they're kind of deflated. And so just don't be so hard on yourself. Like, cut yourself a break. Don't worry about yesterday. Just worry about, hey, okay, I'm getting off this podcast with Todd and Kevin. Like, what can I do right now to move myself forward? Not worrying about what you did before, because you just can't change that.
Right on, man. That was great. Okay. So one more time for anybody interested, what's the website? Is it just winbynoon.com?
winbynoon.com, and
Okay.
we'll do some special deal for people to get the subscription. It's $12.99 a month, and like I said, we'll just post it on there. So we'll I'll just throw up a link that you guys can get on here. Let's just call it winbynoon.com/NLA for Next Level Agents, and go there, and then I'll have a little video up that'll tell you here's the code NLA and how to make the deal happen. So if you're listening to this, just know that's just how I roll. I come up and I make things happen that are torture to my team because I didn't plan it out ahead of time.
True.
And this was a blast. Kevin and I talk all the time, and he didn't really tell me what we were going to talk about. So that was kind of fun. Although of course I love talking about Win by Noon.
So, well, I appreciate that, dude. I just kind of like hanging out with you, and I learn something new every time. Okay. So now what if there's going to be a lender that's listening to this too? Where do they find you? You mentioned a Facebook group or something. So if I'm a lender,
you go to Facebook. It's just the Mortgage Coach Productivity Mastermind. And so I co-lead that with Dave Savage. We're not quite as big as you Next Level Agent guys. We just crested 6,000 people, but like I don't know what a good number is for a live out of a group that size, but we had over 1,000 people on our Scriptapalooza that we just did a couple weeks back, where we had 10 of the, I think, really awesome rock star loan officers, plus one real estate agent on there giving her scripts of how she refers her lender and how she gets leads at open houses. Nicole Solari, give her a shout out. And so it's a pretty good group if you are in the loan biz, or even if you're a realtor and you want to try to show up and learn what loan people are talking about behind your back.
That's awesome, man. I appreciate that. And I'm going to totally rip that idea off and do a script off inside Next Level Agents. I'm going to twist your arm and make you co-host that with me. So
yes.
We'll do that inside the Facebook group. If you're not a member, please join now. If you are a member, or even if you aren't and you want to be a member and you want to join in the script off, shoot me a message on Facebook and we will get you on the schedule, assuming we don't have that script filled already. And Todd and I are going to be hosting a kind of a real estate script off here pretty soon inside of the Facebook group Next Level Agents.
So excited for that. Look at that. See, we're both like running things on the fly. That's pretty good.
It's good, man. All right. Well, Todd, I really appreciate your time today. And I look forward to talking to you again soon, man.
All right, my friend. I'll see you soon.
All right, guys. Go out there and have a good one. We'll talk to you later.